tanks are absolutely crucial for the next stage in this conflict. Ukraine is a vast country. The war at the moment has become very static. Russians dug into trenches. The Ukrainians want tanks because that gives them maneuver, the ability to maneuver in large areas very quickly and break through those static Russian lines, get behind the Russian forces, cut them off from their logistic support, and is probably the surest way, but combined with infantry and artillery and air power, to defeat the Russians in Ukraine.
You know the Challenger tank well. What does the Challenger bring to the Ukrainian forces?
Well, Western tanks, and particularly Challenger 2, vastly overmatch Russian tanks and the old Soviet tanks that the Ukrainians have at the moment. The firepower, 120 millimeter, very accurate, very powerful gun, can fire on the move accurately, and probably more importantly, can fire accurately at night. All the things that Russian tanks can't do. As far as protection goes, Challenger 2 is very well protected. It would take a number of hits from a T-72 and the crew would survive. Completely different to the Russian tanks, very little protection, and we're seeing them destroyed in their thousands. And mobility. Challenger 2, although 40 miles an hour doesn't sound very fast, for something, approaching 70 tons, it's very impressive, and you can cover a huge amount of ground. The last time I was in a Challenger 2 as second in command of the 2nd Royal Tank Regiment, I went for over 2,500 miles in my Challenger 2 with absolutely no problems at all.
How does it handle the terrain? Because we will, in a couple of months, be likely in a very muddy, sticky situation in terms of the ground.
The state of the ground is, of course, key. At the moment, it's pretty frozen, so no problem for tanks there. Once it starts getting muddy, we have more of a challenge. However, the benefit that a Challenger 2 has over Russian tanks, it has much higher ground clearance, the distance between the hull and the ground. Therefore, it is less likely to get bogged in than Russian tanks.
The Ukrainians originally would have trained on Soviet-era tanks, the kind of tanks that Russia is using. How different is it going to be for them to operate in Challenger?
A lot of their crews are very experienced. There's very little we can teach them about tank warfare itself. When it comes to the tank, Challenger 2 is very easy to use. It's sort of almost PlayStation technology for firing the gun. And when I converted from Challenger 1 to Challenger 2, I did that in less than a day, although I was commanding the tank and only needed to fire it. When it comes to driving, it will be, again, very simple to do. Won't be any challenge there. And for the gunner, the one thing that will be a challenge is a lot of the Russian tanks only had 3 main crews and have autoloaders. The Challenger 2, you load the gun itself. But again, this is not a complicated operation. The next consideration will be the logistic support. But again, it's about diesel, getting enough diesel into these tanks. But, Challenger 2 is relatively good when it comes to that. And other parts are very much plug and play. If there's a problem with the engine, you whip it out and you put a new one in. And again, I think that's well within the compass of Ukrainian mechanics to be able to pick that up pretty quickly.
If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.